All right, guys, before we get started, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Windows 11, the official operating system of the NFL and the exclusive sponsor of the LA Chargers. The all-new Windows 11 is here to bring you closer to what you love, like the Chargers and the final drive. Learn about all the awesome new features of Windows 11 at windows.com. And welcome in to the final drive. For Hayley Elwood, I'm Chris Hayre. Chargers lose 34-28 in overtime on the final drive. A Travis Kelce touchdown seals it for Kansas City. This was a game, Hayley, first place in the AFC West on the line. I thought whoever won this game would be in the driver's seat for the division crown. It would have been the first time the Chargers sweep the Chiefs since 2013. It was not meant to be.
It wasn't. I mean, it was definitely a roller coaster of a game. You could start really at the beginning with the unfortunate injury that happened to Donald Parham Jr. And I know that we're all just hoping he is still okay as we sit here on this Friday morning. But you saw, I think, and you and I have talked about this, the way that this game started for this Chargers team, it really felt like they could have gotten in a hole very early, and they didn't. They ended up overcoming all the adversity that they faced at the beginning with the Parham injury, which ultimately resulted in a turnover on downs. And then they really kind of kicked it into gear. And then it became a bit of a ball game. But you just kind of felt towards the end that once Kansas City won that coin toss in overtime and once they elected to receive, there really wasn't any going back at that point because of how they had played and really came on strong towards the end of the game. But, you know, a lot was on the line, obviously, but the season, hey, good news, does not end today. There's still three more games after this. And I think another huge positive for this Chargers team as they exit week 15 is you get a little bit of a mini bye, which I know that guys talked about after the game last night in terms of just getting some players back healthy. It was very clear Derwin James was not 100% last night. He was taken out of the game. Austin Eckler was dealing with soreness as well. And Brandon Staley talked about those guys having that quote unquote warrior spirit that really there was going to be no denying that they were going to get into that game last night and really give it their all. And they did. But now you get a chance to actually come back, get some guys, hopefully healthy as you make this stretch and this push with three final games left in the 2021 slate.
Yeah, it's such an important stretch, these next three games. And, let me just echo what you said about Donald Parham. Football felt so secondary in that moment, and we're all just thinking of him and hoping all the best. And like you said, the Chargers, they go down 10-0. They were able to kind of seize momentum back before halftime, and you go into the half up 14-10. Could have been 17-10, could have been 21-10. I think the story of this game, Hayley, when you look at it and you kind of search why the Chargers lost this game, three times inside the 5, resulting in 0 points. And, Coach Staley said, like, hey, this is how we're going to play football. We're going to play football. We're going to go for it on fourth down. So if that's the case, then it was just from an execution standpoint. You have to execute better on fourth down if this is going to be the identity of the team.
Yeah. And I thought Justin Herbert, I'm actually looking it up right now, he gave a really good answer when he was asked about just not being able to convert some of those fourth downs. And he really said, I think we need to be better on third downs, that we don't get into those situations. It's very clear with what Brandon Staley said last night that, look, this is the identity of this team. They're going to go for it. And when Herbert was asked, well, if the identity and the known factor here is that you're going to go for it, is that a disadvantage? Knowing the teams are going to play you, knowing the teams are going to say, oh yeah, we have to be out on this field for one more down. And Herbert's answer just saying, I think we need to be better on third down so that we're not in those situations, I thought was a really good answer. Look, but there's a belief in this team, and Staley's talked about it all season long, that when they really feel like they're in those situations that they can get the job done, they're going to take those risks, and sometimes it's going to work out. And unfortunately last night, sometimes it's not. And hindsight's 2020. And you can always look back and say, hey, there could have been essentially 9 more points that this team could have had tacked on to their final score, but it wasn't the case. It didn't happen. And you have to move on from there. But I did think, as Herbert said, it's a statement of trusting everyone on the field and off the field. And there is a definite trust in this team. And that is what, those decisions ultimately breed. And Keenan Allen has said, hey, I'd rather have the ball I'd rather be the guys on the field versus standing on the sideline watching our kicker make it. But it is what it is. Again, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Unfortunately, it didn't last night, but every game, as Brandon Staley says, is its own movie and is its own week. So this was this week, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah. And listen, the guys are on board with it. Keenan said he wants the ball in his hands. He wants the ball in Justin's hands to make the play and go for it. So everybody's on the same page with it. It just wasn't meant to be yesterday. And, as far as the division's concerned now, I mean, gosh, you win that game, Hayley, you sweep the Chiefs for the first time in 8 years. And you're really sitting pretty for a home game in January. Right now, I mean, it's 8-6. There's a bunch of teams at 7-6, and we could talk about some of the games this weekend that have playoff implications. But I wonder if the Chargers get in the tournament, if we see this for a third time, and what it would look like with a healthy Derwin James. I mean, we talked about it offline. Travis Kelce, 191 yards. Tyreek Hill, those guys combined for 339 receiving yards. When Derwin is on the field, he makes a marked difference in terms of covering Travis Kelce. I just have to wonder if this matchup is played again. And listen, let's also be fair. Chris Jones was not in this game for the Chiefs. Rashawn Slater was not in this game. Austin Eckler was battling through some stuff. I thought Justin Jackson really stepped up and got the running game going. But I look at that one matchup, that Travis Kelce, Derwin James matchup, as maybe being the difference in this football game on Thursday, and what it would look like if both guys were healthy in January.
It probably would look a lot different. I mean, Chris Harris Jr. even kind of joked.
He was emphatic about it.
He was very emphatic, very, very emphatic about it after the game. But, I think that's the NFL, right? That's life in the NFL. It's a next man up mentality. This team was able to get through that last week against the Giants. And obviously the Giants are a very different team than the Chiefs and weapons wise notwithstanding. But yeah, I think they would all love a crack at it a third time. And that would be interesting to see what happens. But it is very clear Derwin James is obviously a difference maker when he is out on that field. He just, and being, fully healthy up until this point has made such a huge difference for this Chargers, not only defense, but team in general. But it's these guys had to step up, and it was a next man up mentality, and they did to a point. But, there was so much momentum that the Chiefs had at the end of the game that it just wouldn't be surprising if that defense too was a little gassed and just sort of, kind of tired at that point with the track meet that ended up happening with KC. But it's always an interesting matchup when these two teams meet. I mean, I think when you look, putting Derwin aside, when you just look at the quarterbacks, and I know it's never Mahomes versus Herbert, and I know that these guys talk about that all the time. We're not going up against one another. We're going up against the defenses. But it is fun to kind of have a rivalry, a real sort of rivalry like back. It feels like that when these two teams meet, you have that vibe. You think of, you and I have done so much with the guys who played on those teams in the 2000s with Running for History. And you hear them talk about like just the Raiders rivalries that they had back then and the Broncos, and they just hated each other. And I'm not saying that that's the extent. I mean, I actually thought what Tyrann Mathieu said after the game, where he tweeted, the charge, like I forget the exact verbiage, but it basically
they got a good thing going or something.
They got a good thing going. Yeah. I just think it's really cool that now that rivalry is there, the seeds have been planted, and that really anytime these two teams meet, it's going to be an exciting game for sure.
Chiefs have played 2 games at SoFi Stadium against the Chargers. They both have gone to overtime. Yeah. It had shades of that 2018 game where, the Chargers won at the end, 29-28. I do think that, as far as the running game is concerned, Hayley, I was encouraged by what I saw there each of the last 2 weeks. And, seeing it last Sunday against the Giants was one thing, but having that carry over against the Chiefs defense, and I realized Chris Jones was not in the game again, but the Chiefs have played really, really well on defense these last 6-7 weeks. 192 yards on the ground. I mean, Justin Jackson, 86 yards, 6.6 a pop. Eckler, who was clearly hobbled, 12 for 59, 4.9 a pop. Josh Kelly had 7 carries. Unfortunately, that fumble, which Chenna was able to kind of bail out the offense there. So it worked out, even though it was a little scary for a minute if you were a Chargers fan. And then, as far as Keenan, he's back, 678 and a touchdown. And, you just mentioned it too offline. Just Justin's stats, they weren't as big as maybe I thought they were. 236 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He had that interception. But clearly, Hayley, this game was anybody's for the taking. If you want to think like glass half full, 8-6, Houston, Denver, Vegas on deck. And I don't think that this loss really shook the team up in terms of confidence. In fact, I would think that this makes them maybe feel a little bit better about where they are and that they can compete. And I think they know they have to take care of business against 3 teams that they should beat to close the 2021 season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, after all these games and as tough as a loss as this was, they were in the game, to your point of it really was anyone's at some point. It wasn't like the Baltimore game where they were just out of it. The Patriots game where they just eventually ended up, it just became too much to overcome.
Yeah.
They were in it. And I think when you have been in those press conferences, though, at any of one of those losses during the season, there's never really been like a demoralizing defeat. It's always been this kind of cautious optimism of like, we got this, like, we'll be okay. And I think that's what we saw last night. Justin Herbert said, we're awfully close, and it's tough. It's tough when you have to say like, we're just so close, not quite there, but we're close enough. But I love that he said his quote of, everyone is going to ride with us and we're going to trust each other. And we'd love to be in that opportunity. And I think that is what you see throughout this team on offense, on defense. It really is a team effort. These guys are giving it their all to turn around, what they didn't accomplish last season, and to be 8-6 heading into week 16 with a playoff berth essentially still in play. That's huge for this team for sure. In a first year operation where everything is new, and a second year quarterback who obviously is not playing like he's in his second year. He's playing like a very seasoned veteran at this point, but he's very capable. He's capable of very special things. But it is, there is optimism to be had. And you have 3 games. You have 3 very essentially winnable games, a really good kind of get back game in week 16 against the Houston Texans. And look, we know this is the NFL. Anything can happen any given week, but they are 2-11. I think they played the 2-11 Jags this week, who are going through their own things right now.
Yes.
But a good opportunity to get to 9-6 in week 16. And again, a really good opportunity right now to kind of take a beat, take a weekend, get healthy, and come back next week ready to roll.
It's the biggest thing, getting guys back and keeping them healthy and getting them ready for this stretch run where, it's going to be so important to really win all 3 of these games to get into the tournament. There's some games with playoff implications this weekend. The Browns and Raiders game, my gosh, the Browns have been ravaged by COVID, and they're going to be extremely shorthanded. They're in the mix. They're 7-6. The Chargers have the tiebreaker over them. The Raiders are really hanging on here by a thread. They're 6-7. That game's interesting. The Patriots and the Colts. Patriots right now are number 1 seed in the AFC. The Colts have kind of clawed their way back into the picture. And then I think the big one is Bengals Broncos on Sunday too. These teams are kind of nipping at the heels of the Chargers, and one of them is going to fall back and one is going to be 8-6 alongside the Chargers after Sunday. So those 3 games, Hayley, I think are the ones to watch as far as the AFC is concerned. And I really truly think that this is going to come down to week 18 in terms of seeding and figuring out what this puzzle is going to look like for the playoffs.
It is, because there is still so much parity in the AFC. When you look at all the teams that are even still in the hunt, and I think you'd put the Raiders in that category, even with being 1 game below 500, there is still so much to be worked out. And even though 3 games is only 3 games, we do say there's so much football left, because really anything can happen. And some of these matchups that are happening over these last 3 weeks are really, really intriguing as well. That Bengals Broncos game is really big. That is a really, really big game right there. But hey, this team gets to sit back and watch this weekend. That's kind of the good thing.
You know what? First cup of coffee, I'm not, I don't have the calculations in my head. Who do we want to win that game? If you're a Chargers fan, who do you want to win that game? Because you beat the Bengals, you lost to the Broncos, you play the Broncos again in week 17. Does it matter? Is it just like, all right, like Chargers have to take care of their own business? I'm trying to think, what's the rooting interest there?
I don't know. I mean, I think because you already have the win over the Bengals, like that, if they end up with the same record as you, there, I have not had coffee, or tea or any caffeinated substance. So I am talking totally
I think you're right.
Here.
I think you're right, because if Bengals beat the Broncos fall back in the division, you would have the tiebreaker over Cincinnati if it came down to that.
And if the Broncos,
it took me a half a cup of coffee to figure it out.
Well, I'm very proud of myself with my lack thereof any caffeine at this point this morning. But yeah, because if the Broncos win, they're 8-6, but they hold the tiebreaker over you because they have the win over the Chargers at this point. So I think that's what we want. But ultimately, it is just control your own business at this point. That's it. You just got to take care of yourself. You've given yourself a chance, which is what you want. And the last thing that I think anyone wants is for it to be week 18 when you're having a scoreboard watch and you need help, as they say. So just take care of your own business. Get to Houston next week. Yeah. Take care of it there. Get to Denver. Get to Vegas. See what happens.
Forget what we said about scoreboard. Just enjoy the games this weekend.
Enjoy the games.
Hope the Chargers take care of business starting next Sunday against the Texans. And we'll be back for that with another edition of the Final Drive after the Chargers take on Houston on December 26th. That'll do it for us. For Hayley Elwood, I'm Chris Hayre. Happy holidays to everybody. We'll see you next time.